Are aware of the fact that before Cassie Bernal was gunned down at Columbine High, she also was bound by satanic forces through music and the darkness of youth culture. Through rock groups like Marilyn Manson, Satan took this once sweet little girl who had once given her life to Jesus and turned her into a bitter and murderous young lady. In fact, Cassie had been brought so far down that she was preparing to kill her own parents.
She told me that she had given her soul to Satan, and because of that, she felt completely alienated from God.
Cassie's close friends recounted how Cassie had actually given her soul to Satan.
People need to realize that Cassie wasn't just a perfect little Christian girl her whole life. The kids that actually, that killed her, she was going down that same path.
Yeah, it certainly looks like it.
Understand that it's okay to intervene in your kids' lives and to take a strong stand, that there is hope to bring them out and back and
Yeah, she totally just looks like a Satanist, yeah.
put them on the pathway to being productive adults.
Here we are.
I'm sorry, but I can only show so much empathy. The mom and the dad definitely look more like Satanists to me. That girl looks absolutely innocent, and definitely coming from a true metal fan since I was in elementary, to be honest, and it grew more and more. I can tell you right now that being a true metal fan who's never killed anyone or raped anyone or done any blood sacrifices or drank blood of babies or any of that stuff, I can tell you from my experience, this just does not look like someone who is a fanatic when it comes to Marilyn Manson. Now, could she be? Sure, I know people that looked preppy as hell and, listened to Marilyn Manson, but those people wouldn't have took it this far. Something's off here.
The Cassie Bernal Youth Building, which is a place where Cassie used to meet with her church family. It was in this building that I was able to ask Brad Bernal about the steps that he and his wife Misty took to rescue Cassie from pop culture. Cassie was on the same road to destruction as were her killers, but by God's grace and tough love, Brad and Misty were able to snatch her from the fire. Brad, being a father of 3 children and loving them just incredibly, I can't fathom going through what you went through with Cassie and having your daughter, shot in the head. The pain you must have endured. How did the Lord get you through that? How were you able to deal with that? Speak to us about what you went through during that time.
Well, to put it in a nutshell, Joe, April 20th, 1999, 5:30 in the morning was the last time I talked to Cassie. I said goodbye to her as I was leaving work, not knowing that was the last time I was going to see her. By 9:45 that morning, I was feeling ill in my stomach. I was getting sick and decided to go home. So I did. Went home and was lying on the bed, and around between 10:30 and 11, started hearing the pops and the booms. The window was open. It was a beautiful day. And I just thought, it's lunchtime. They're out there celebrating. School's almost out. Shortly after that, I received a phone call from a coworker. Said, Brad, did you know that there may have been shots fired at Columbine? I said, no, I didn't. Hung up. Phone rang again. It was Misty. Same story. So I got dressed and went out of the backyard, looked over our 6-foot fence, and by then the whole soccer field at the high school was full of police, and I thought, man, this is serious. I went back inside. I went to the couch and I knelt, and I just prayed to the Lord. I asked him, if people got to be injured, okay, but please don't let anyone die. Don't let anyone die. Well, we only get what we ask if we pray in accordance with the Lord, and this obviously wasn't his his plan. But when Cassie never came home that night, we didn't lose our hope yet. She was smart, she was resourceful. We thought she may have been hiding, but ultimately, that happened on a Tuesday, and I believe it was early in the morning on Thursday we received official notice from the coroner that Cassie was one of the victims and had been identified. And I can't tell you the mental anguish and the physical pain that I could feel in my chest. It was just, Joe, it was consuming me. It was just more that I could handle. It felt like my heart was swelling and was going to burst. And a couple days before we buried Cassie, I went out of the backyard to feed our rabbits. And it just overwhelmed me. And I dropped to my knees in the snow and I lifted my hands. I said, Lord, you've got to take this pain. You've got to take this pain out, and you've got to take the mental anguish, and would you give me a little something back also? And as soon as those words left my mouth, the pain in my chest went away. The awful mental anguish went away, and I was left with the missing part and the questions why. It still was hard, but the unbearable part of that agony was gone. And I really believe that what happened at Columbine on that day was truly a spiritual battle. It was a pinnacle, and Satan was trying to make his stand, and God was gonna reply, and he did. I talked with the mother of a young man who was in the library that day, and he was shot badly, and he was paralyzed from the waist down. And his mother told me that as he lied there on the floor, having been shot at least once already, he said that he saw this huge angel coming, and stood in front of him. And the angel looked down and said, "Don't move, just play dead." Apparently one of the boys came with a gun and stood right in line with he at that angel, stopped, paused, moved on, and never harmed this fella again. And he's now undergoing more surgeries and such, and is coming along well, although he's still paralyzed. But I think I can address with some authority more so how it was really a spiritual battle, because I was able to see the videotapes that Eric and Dylan made before they committed their crime. And in that tape, it was very blatant, Joe. They hated Christians. They hated God. That's mostly what they talked about, all the effing little Christians. And one thing that they said that really caught my ear was they said they were going to shoot the Christians in the head.
Right.
And we know that's what they did with Cassie, and that's what they did with a lot of other young people there that day that were Christians.
One of my concerns is that not only was that covered up much by the media, as far as the fact that they were out to get Christians, much of the media ignored that. They said they were out to get jocks, and one jock said, "Hey, if they're out to get us, why weren't they at the gym?" We know that they killed 8 high-profile Christians on campus. Another thing the media seems to have covered rather greatly, for the most part, was the fact that both Klebold and Harris were into bands like KMFDM, Rammstein, Marilyn Manson, listening to music, and we've covered that in our video. They sold their souls for rock and roll. Listening to music that was strongly, Brad, purporting death. And Rammstein's lyrics that they were into from the song Weißes Fleisch, as you're familiar with, the first line is, "You in the schoolyard, I'm ready to kill." And boy, did they. In your own life, you had rescued Cassie from the same culture of death as she was into Marilyn Manson, and she was mutilating her body. Explain to us how you rescued her. Explain to us how you found out the effect you saw in her life, and then how you realized there was a line you could draw from her life and the effect that was in her life right to the very music and the subculture of death that she was into.
Wow, they pushed the same narrative then, you see? Wow. They got the little hidden agenda. It was all about Christians. Am I doubting that it didn't involve Christianity? No, I'm not doubting that at all. I actually believe that both of the parents of the shooters were very, extremely religious as well. Maybe one of the families weren't, but I guarantee you, one of them was. And the other one was definitely someone who claimed to be Christian. One of them was extreme. More cases of religious trauma syndrome. That's what is being hidden from the media, it's hidden from us through the leadership of the United States, whether it's right or left. They hide it. Why do they hide it? Well, first of all, because they don't think it's a big deal, because they don't understand anything past this kind of philosophy. They go for this, fall for this. The ones that don't fall for this are like me, who are considered Satanists and baby eaters and leftist, cultist, wokist, zeros, losers who hate God and hate America and hate family and hate our Constitution, hate freedom. They hate everyone. I hate everyone. No. Nope. Got the wrong guy. And this is nothing but an absolute propaganda scheme against metal music and anything else they can link to Satanism. Although Satanism is nothing like they explain at all. And the evidence of all this stuff, guess what? Not found. Just speculation. Speculation. I can link murders to horror movies, art, and so many things all day long. Oh, right before the person was killed, they were looking at very graphic art imagery online, and it's very, very anti-God and anti-American. So anti-family values. They can use anything they want. You can turn a fucking roller rink into a satanic ritual asylum. It's just out of hand. It hasn't changed, and that's what's terrifying.
Explain to us how you saw that and how you rescued her from that.
Well, the signs are really quite subtle. Hindsight is always 20/20, but I can remember looking back before we knew there was a problem on her wrists. We could see where, they were cut. And we'd ask, what happened there, Cassie? And we never got any good explanations. But what we found out was that she was taking a little metal file and scratching until she bled.
I wonder why they didn't know that that's what was happening. Oh, I wonder how many kids were doing this back then, and they were just like, I didn't notice what she was doing. That's just so unprecedented. It's unimaginable. It's incomprehensible to even think this, let alone it actually happen.
And that's one of the signs that I think parents can look for. But when we really found out there was a problem was when Misty went into Cassie's room looking for her teen Bible. Misty had sensed a distancing that was growing between those two, and was seeking that Bible to try and find some insights. Well, in going through Cassie's room to find that Bible, she came across this stack of letters that had been passed between her and a friend that talked about how unhappy Cassie was and how she should murder her parents. And the letters had ideas and diagrams of how this could be carried out, and people who could be recruited who might be just effed up enough to be able to do something like this.
Really? And this is true. This is all true. Because I gotta say, I hope you know that you're going to be judged. All of you are going to be judged as well in the end. And your lies will not be effective when you face God Himself. Your lies, if these are as bad as I believe they are to be, bold-faced lies to promote this God culture, American God, freedom, guns, babies culture, where you say, what about freedom and pro-life, but you can't have any rights, just us. And if you don't like it, you're persecuting us. You're going to get mad and say horrible things to us because we say horrible things about you, but we're of God and you're not, so you're bad and we're good. This is all going to go to God. So, I mean, good luck, I guess, because I've been trying for years to get through, and I just end up being the bad guy every time. So, good luck, I guess. But for the people who are lost and hurting themselves and want to die, feel like they don't belong, that's what I'm doing this for. That's who I'm doing this for. That's the reason I'm doing this. And this guy is, you know, he's got to be made irrelevant when it comes to this spiritual aspect, because he's irrelevant. He don't have any evidence. He has this journal. The girl doesn't look anything like a Satanist. If she did go to a Marilyn Manson concert, okay, but is there proof of that other than it could have been a joke? Someone else wrote it down. Is that her writing? Okay, if it is, she still could have been a joke. Maybe she knew her mom was going through her shit and she left as a prank. Think about it. Her mom was going there snooping to find a youth Bible, and instead finds this horrible story she wrote about how she's going to kill her parents brutally. And if it is true, religious trauma syndrome still. Christian parents not letting her listen to any secular music, monitoring everything she does. Likely she might have been into girls and hid it. And that drove her even more over the edge. She couldn't be herself. Her own family would have been driving this agenda. Because we know guys like this, and fathers and mothers like this, they're that extreme when it comes, you know, they're deeply devoted to Christianity. They're most likely anti-gay, and nowadays anti-woke, and anti-CRT. Because we don't want kids to learn about black culture because it'll make them hate white culture even more. Because apparently we think the youth are still fucking stupid, but they're not.
That opened our eyes to a side of Cassie that we did not know existed, and ultimately we conferred with our pastor, and then had to go to the sheriff. And the sheriff said of those letters that they were the worst he had seen in his over 10 years in the juvenile division. And if either of the girls had been in any prior trouble, they would be before a judge.
Wow.
At that point, we realized that a much bigger problem on our hands that we weren't aware of just the day before. And in order to get Cassie out of trouble, the first step we had to take was to separate Cassie from the group of people that she called her friends, the peers that she wanted to fall in line with. And these were the guys that were experimenting with drugs, they were cutting class, they were drinking alcohol, dabbling in witchcraft,
Right.
and Satanism. Now let me tell you, Cassie, at a very young age, I'm thinking it was 6th grade, got baptized on her own accord. I taught her Sunday school class for 3 or 4 years in her.
Wow. Yeah. She was hanging around with witchcraft kids and Satanist kids. They're all over the place, yeah. All over the place, especially back in the 90s, the 80s, 90s. Whew. Satan was in so many places, like Manson would say. It'd be pretty impressive for him to be in all these places at once. You know, especially with everything he's got to do to survive. I wonder if Cassie was just trying to survive within her own skin, which everyone wanted to control.
And the kids in my class understood the plan of salvation. They knew what it was about. And these kids, on their own, decided it was time for them to get baptized. So Cassie understood. She got baptized, and she wanted to be the person that the Lord wanted her to be. So you can see how strong the peer groups can be to pull a kid that is focused like that off and get them started experimenting in the wrong stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I can see how a 12-year-old would be easier to indoctrinate than a high school student. You know, but we know that CRT and transgenderism and all this, these teachers, they start teaching out to kids, you know, even at 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. And it's happening everywhere. Everywhere. You may not even know it's happening, but now you do. Not stupid. God's exposing you.
Cassie had experimented experimenting is probably too light of a term, because she had actually given her soul to Satan. She had told me.
Wow.
That's how deep she was when she was in trouble. Well, separating her from those kids, and also from other influences that we thought were bad. The CDs in particular, the music that she was listening to, we had no idea the influence that that had on her. The scratches I talked about where she would cut herself.
Right.
When we would go through some of those CDs and see the innocuous titles on the covers, then open them up, flip through the jacket, read the real titles, read the lyrics. We couldn't believe what we read, Joe. The lyrics were condoning the drug use, the sex, murder, self-mutilation, all of this stuff that Cassie was into.
Right.
It was
The CDs. It was all the fault of the music. Yep. Yeah. Pop culture. Now called woke culture. Or was it New Age in 99? The New Age. Yeah, they had no idea. This is always the case back then. They had no idea this music was like this. As if they didn't even take the time to look at the album cover and go, whoa, there it is. I mean, it automatically gives you the idea of what the music is likely about. You know, like, I couldn't believe, like the one girl, I couldn't believe that he was listening to this music until I looked at the album covers, and this was satanic, and it shows literally a cover from Iron Maiden, which every single Iron Maiden cover clearly is very descriptive on the cover. I've never seen it. Yeah, because you just don't, she literally said, I didn't know. I thought that if they sold it, then it must be all right. And then what did we get? Parental advisories on the CD. Now we're about parental rights, which is no different than parental advisory. They needed someone to say, that's bad, right there. Boom, a sticker on there. Just so the parents could be like, oh, that must be bad because it's a parental advisory. I'm not going to listen to that. Yeah, you wouldn't listen to it before to see what the fuck it was. And then when you did, you're like, oh my God, they're all eating babies and biting the fucking heads off of bats. Holy shit.
incredible. And of course we took the CDs that were of that flavor, placed a heavy scratch on them, and in the can they went.
Praise God.
Okay, now we had a very, very unhappy young lady at this point.
Sure.
They took the CDs, scratched them up, and threw them in the trash. Wow. I heard a story, my dad told me how my grandpa took his albums, and I can't remember if he actually destroyed them, but definitely took them away. I'm pretty sure he destroyed some of them. And guess what? They were before this time, but the same exact philosophy. The Iron Maiden days, the Metallica, the AC/DC. What was the one he hated? Megadeth. They weren't a fan of Ozzy. Definitely threw away Slayer. Anything like that. And my dad's traumatized to this day and doesn't accept it. Doesn't get it. And if you try to tell him, he's offended. And he's now far right, extreme. And I love my father, and it's hard to watch him go through that, but just by him hearing this, he would think I'm just being a leftist, cultist, wokist, socialist who wants to destroy America and God, but that's not it at all. My dad wasn't like this when I was a kid. He was not like this. This is the work of the true devil happening in America.
And that's putting it lightly, because not only did we destroy a lot of her music, but we said you couldn't hang out with these kids anymore, and it was the toughest step we ever took. And we knew that by doing that we took a chance of driving Cassie further away from us. But we were determined to do what we felt was right.
Right.
And when Marilyn Manson says, raise your kids or I'm going to raise them, he means business.
Right.
Because not only he, but the others have such a tremendous influence on these kids, and Cassie was a prime example of that. She was going right down that road.
Right.
Oh yeah. Oh, wrong. What Manson really means by that, and let's just go ahead and get to the fact that Manson actually grew up going to a Christian school. I believe it was a Catholic school. But, hey, listen. Manson was already retaliating and rebelling against the church at a young age, but he wasn't doing it like you see now or see then. He was doing it in a joke way. He was joking and mocking it, drawing 666, they said in the school, probably on paper, but they exaggerate, say it was like on the desks or something. And he would joke around and make fun of them. And ultimately, his parents finally took him out of it. It just wasn't working out. And when he went to public school, obviously he was completely the outcast. Probably a lot similar to Rachel Joy Scott in a way. He was outcast, he didn't understand what was going on. He didn't even understand the music. And then when he got into it, it was like, wow. And guess what? He didn't kill anyone. He didn't sacrifice anyone. Well, I guess except all the children in America. What he did is he gave people an outlet who were the outcast, and those who could comprehend it and accept it for the self-expression and the art that he was displaying to us who never heard this side. We only heard the God this, God that, God bless, Jesus said, the Bible says. All of a sudden, he's going the way that we felt inside, but things we couldn't do. And it was like, whoa. But if you listen to them lyrics, if you don't raise your children, I will, he says. Well, what he's saying is if you're not doing things right, if you're not doing things that bring joy and happiness and make your children feel like they belong in your family and in society, then they're going to reach for Manson. And many have for that same reason, because of their religious zealot families. And they didn't kill anyone or themselves. They rejoiced.
We had to stay with Cassie constantly. Misty quit her job, and we tagged him. We took turns being with her because she became suicidal. When we told her that she was going to be separated from those kids, we saw a side of Cassie that we'd never seen before. She was just totally irate. She would scream at us and tell us how much she hated us.
I can imagine. You took her away from her friends, you threw away her CDs, hard telling what other kind of punishments she was going through. I can believe she was quite angry. Quite angry. This is basically homemade conversion therapy. We have no idea what happened, but I bet it was brutal. What kind of kid wouldn't be that upset when you're taking all that away from her? If someone did try to do that to my daughter, you'd see the side of Satan that you're trying to see so hard out of me. But that ain't me. But I could be pushed to that. Is that what you want? Do you want people who just simply disagree with you to start retaliating like your people did? Huh? Is that what you want? Like Constantine did? Like people crucified the Templars, like people crucified the Cathars, like people crucified everyone to keep building a bigger and a bigger and a bigger church, changing everything as they go, revising this, revising that. Is that what you want? To make us unhinged? Because our unhinged is much worse than your unhinged. We don't come after Disney, Pokemon, Ouija boards, cartoons and all that, and, vaping, and crazy haircuts and clothing styles, and this horrible secular music. We don't come after that. Nuh-uh. We will come after the true purpose, lawfully, because you are tormenting and have been children for years. You want to see a sacrifice, a satanic sacrifice? That's basically what happened to school because of people like him and the wife, and many more were involved. People who still probably don't even understand what they truly did to their kids.
It was heartbreaking,
Right.
because we loved Cassie very much, and we were willing to do anything for her, including risking losing her.
Our hope and prayer is that parents would realize that their children are listening to much of the same music, and it may not have the same effect. They might not even be cutting their wrist, but if it keeps them from Jesus, that's enough to damn their souls. And that's Satan's main objective. He doesn't necessarily have to get them to kill themselves. He could just keep them from worshiping Jesus. And Satan, being a musician, has given them the substitute of his wicked music. And I'm so glad you raised that point. That we're told by Barna Research Group that mothers spend on average 30 minutes with their children a day, and dads on average 15 minutes. And that's heart-wrenching in our culture. To see the sacrifice that you guys made. I know that Misty quit her job. Can you explain just the sacrifices you realized you had to make to rescue her, to spend more time with her, to be in her life, and to bring her up in Jesus?
Wow. Average mothers spend 30 minutes a day with their kids, and fathers spend 15 minutes a day with their kids? Fucking bullshit. That's kind of unhinged, exaggerated propaganda they would spread today. Get the fuck out of here. My dad listened to all this music that you say is gonna kill everyone. Guess what? He spent way more time than that with me. You fuck.
Because I think that should speak to all parents, that we should be convicted that our children grow up fast. We need to lay our lives down to bring them up in Jesus.
The sacrifice was great. Not only did she have to quit her job, but we had to tell Chris, we love you, but we're going to have to concentrate on Cassie. We're going to have to spend more time with her. She's in trouble, and this is what it's going to take to get her out of trouble. And he was very understanding at a very young age. Like I said, we we stayed with her all the time. But Cassie had lost all trust, all freedom, and all privileges. And she couldn't contact those friends. We went so far to tap our own phone as a litmus test to find out when we could start trusting her.
It was worth her salvation, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. But it was the hardest thing
Yeah.
that we had ever done. She was very young, but we would search her backpack. We would go through her room, through her drawers, under her bed, in between the mattresses. And, these were things that the sheriff told us that we needed to do. They said,
Wow. Through her drawers, all through her room, through her mattress, even tapped the phones to hear what she's saying on the phones. Fuck.
a lot of people don't know this, but your children, they have no right to privacy when they are children and they are living in your house. You have every right in the world to go in and do those kind of things, which is what we did. And
Would that Claybold and Harris's parents were heads up to that, and that would have stopped the whole Columbine situation?
that's true.
Yeah, I didn't know that I had that right. I thought it was taken away from the leftist cultist socialists. I didn't know I could not give my daughter privacy. I just let her go TikTok and put her booty all on it. Actually, I do let her go on TikTok, and she probably has done a little twerking. Is she gonna join a satanic cult?
It could have been prevented, but I think a lot of parents, they see that our kids are seemingly doing okay, but our kids they're very good at living two lives.
Right.
Cassie was. She had this whole other life from us very well. You can't expect your children to tell you the bad stuff they're doing.
Yeah, right.
You have to figure it out yourself. You have to step out of your comfort zone, and you got to do these things. You've got to do whatever you've got to do to know what is going on in their life, who they're hanging out with, what kind of music they're listening to, and what is influencing their minds.
How many times have they said fucking music already during this? And yeah, you totally got to know what's going on, even though you didn't know what the cuts on the arm was all about, and you didn't know what the music was all about. And then you found out later, like, whoa, this is what it was all along. Can't believe it was just the music. She's cutting herself just because Manson said so. He's like Momo now.
Right. We're looking at peer pressure, dealing with that, dealing with the death culture that is just wiping out tens of thousands of kids every day. We get calls from parents, and we deal with people who are losing their children to mutilation or suicide attempts and things, and they're so strong into the same music, and it's so important to deal with this.
The music again causing suicides everywhere. Death cult. Whew. They had to change that for now, for this time, because that wouldn't have worked today. We'd be like, death cult. The death cult. No, they changed it now. It's just a leftist, cultist, socialist, communist, American-hating, God-hating criminals who are destroying America every second. Because you know why? Because they're evil.
Of course, they need the Word of God, but from what I understand, you switch cultures on her in a sense. You try to separate her from the evil influences. What kind of positive influences, for instance, youth group, or I understand she went on a retreat and she was involved in worshiping God up there and under the stars, just thinking of magnifying his glory. How much of an effect did wholesome biblical things have in her life in not only taking away the evil, but introducing her to things that are wholesome that God wanted in her life? What kind of effect did that have on her, and how did that work?
Well, it was a tremendous effect. With all the things that we had done to implement or to enforce the loss of privilege, trust, and freedoms, that required constant attention from Misty and I to her. We also pulled her out of public school and put her in private Christian school. And we had a very, very difficult time for no less than 8 weeks. At about that time, Cassie had met a young girl, Jamie, who was a classmate, and Jamie belonged to another church and had told Cassie there's a retreat there going on, and that she should go. And she wrote Misty and I a very nice note asking if Cassie could go, because at that time Cassie still couldn't do anything other than school and church and youth group. And we said, well, it's in Estes Park, not sure we're comfortable with that. If she chose to run away, she'd have a 2-hour head start. I don't think we're ready for that yet. Well, she wrote us another note and said it would really be good for Cassie, and we thought, okay. We prayed over this, and we decided that we had to take a step out in faith. So we allowed Cassie to go. We dropped her off at the church, I think on a Friday night, and we picked her up, I believe it was on probably a Saturday evening.
Wow, they had to literally pray and ask God if it's okay if they sent her to a Christian camp, Christian retreat. They took her out of public school, put her in a private Christian school. After all the other stuff they'd already done. Fuck. Are we sure she didn't just kill herself? This is fucking ridiculous.
Possibly, Sonny, I don't remember for sure. But what I do remember, Joe, was when Cassie left, we had still a very troubled young lady who was not happy. And when she came back, I saw her come out of a little car. There was 2 school buses in a car. And as Cassie walked toward me, I noticed something was different right away. Her head was up, and I could see there was a smile on her face. And there was a spring in her step, and as she got closer, it seemed to be a sparkle in her eye. And she came before us, and she said, she addressed Misty, she said, Mom, I've changed. I know you don't believe me, but I'm going to prove it to you. And from that day forward, she became compliant to Misty and mine's authority.
Thank God.
When she asked to do things and we said, no, I don't think it's a good idea, I'm sorry, you can't, she would just say, okay, and then she'd turn around and go her way. Well, at that time, she dug into the youth group at church. She started taking it seriously. And I asked her, Cassie, what happened? What changed you? Because she changed over a weekend. And she says, well, when we were in Estes Park that night, we went out in a car. There was 4 of us, Jamie and I and 2 boys. And we stopped out in the forest, and we got out, and we were just looking at the stars and just marveling over this wonderful universe that God had made for us. They laid their hands on me, and they started praying on me. And she said, Dad, I just felt this like physical weight being lifted off my shoulders.
Thank God.
And
Presence of the enemy.
When that happened, my eyes were open, and I saw where I was headed, why you and Mom were doing what you were doing, and where I needed to go.
We had some good conversations about God and life, and we parked and got out of the car. And we all just stood there for a minute, just in the moment, looking up at the stars and the mountains and the trees. It was clear we were all just overcome by a huge sense of awe and wonder. What an incredible God this is, and how He's created a beautiful life for us to live. And if He can make the mountains, He can make our lives into something that is really beautiful. It was powerful. She just broke down, and we cried together and prayed together. And it was like after that moment, just her whole countenance changed, like her face just glowed. with hope, with joy and peace, and it was incredible.
That physical weight that she felt leave her, that was the bondage that Satan had on her when she had given her soul to him. She was released. And from that day forward, she was